All right, folks, what is going on? This is episode 395 of the First and Frame Rate Show. I am VF Baller. We're 5 away from 400. 5 away from 400. Very, interesting and exciting because, when I first started this podcast, I didn't think it was going to get this far, but I don't want to get too much into that, but just 5 away from 400 is pretty cool. If this is your first time here, welcome. This is the First and Frame Rate Show. I am VF Baller. Over here, we talk about Georgia Southern and Atlanta Falcons football. Today, we're going to talk some Georgia Southern football because one of my favorite players that played for Georgia Southern the past few years is retiring. He's walking away from football, and we're going to talk about what does that mean for the Georgia Southern Eagles going forward, especially with the running, attack is still one of the most prominent things in Georgia Southern football. We're going to talk about what this mean and how things are going to flourish now. Are things going to take a step back? What does it mean overall? So we're going to get into all of that. Over here, you can find me on YouTube and Rumble. I'm also on Anchor, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And like I said, we talk about football, everything under that umbrella. I didn't mention, I did talk about this on a short. I did a short video on this on YouTube, but I want to go more extensive with it because it does mean something for the team at the end of the day. Because we still have running backs that are going to be running the rock for Georgia Southern, but we're still going to be down a man. So I think we was going to probably run some type of running back by committee, but I think that's going to change now, especially with J.D. King is out. So let's go ahead and get into this because I'm already rambling about it. J.D. King, let me give you some background about him. He started off playing at Oklahoma State, came out of Fitzgerald, Georgia, went to Oklahoma State, played very well for his freshman year, played 12 games, had 99 attempts for 469 yards, averaged almost 5 yards a carry, 4 touchdowns, had 8 catches for 50 yards, and a touchdown reception. So playing at Oklahoma State, J.D. King was one of those guys that could have been one of the Oklahoma State's, top premier running backs if he would have stayed. He also played his sophomore year, played 8 games in that time on the team. Only had 43 carries for 153 yards. His production went down a little bit, carries went down as well. Didn't have a touchdown, had 6 receptions for 92 yards, but had 2 touchdown receptions. So for overall, he still was fairly productive. Now, there was a big deal about him leaving Oklahoma State, coming down to Georgia Southern, because a lot of Oklahoma State fans really liked him, and I rightfully so. I mean, he played pretty good for them, but for him being a sophomore, going to his junior year, he wanted to come back towards the Georgia area where he's from, and there was a big deal about this at one point. I mean, I think his transfer didn't get approved till almost like 10 or 7 days prior to the season start. It was a big. I remember I talked about that on the YouTube channel at one point. I thought it was like a really big deal. So when he stepped on the field at Georgia Southern, man, it was a change of pace when it came to running the ball. I mean, we already had a guy like Wesley Kennedy, who was actually really good at running the ball. I mean, he was Mr. Do It All. And then you had Wesley Fields, another guy who was somewhat of a balanced power back. I guess that makes sense. That was able to get away from defenses with speed, but he also had the power to get through some tackles. J.D. King was a hammer. I mean, he just ran through people at times when need be. And when he got in the open field, I mean, it was almost a wrap. So his junior year, when he stepped on the field, he played 12 games, 185 carries for 804 yards. 4.3 yards a carry, 8 touchdowns. He also caught 2 catches for 14 yards. This is with him splitting carries with other players. Because Georgia Southern is one of these teams, we basically just had one guy who was thunder, another one was lightning, another guy could catch out the backfield. But we ran the ball a lot through the option. And J.D. King fit very well with the team. I mean, he came in and he produced at a high level. And I think if he got a couple more touches, I mean, if he got up to the 200, 215, 200 and 215 attempts, we could have been touching close to 1,000 yards. But that was a really good productive season. 2020, he came in, played only 7 games, was on his way. I believe he was on his way to a 1,000-yard season because in the 7 games that he played, 116 carries, 625 yards, 5.4 yards a carry, 5 touchdowns, 3 receptions for 14 yards. I mean, but this is the season where he went down with the knee injury, and we were all worried about how that's going to go. And it was kind of a bittersweet moment because even though we did do pretty well in the season, I think we end up winning the RL Carrier Bowl. It just wasn't the same because he was our guy, and we kind of know how the 2021 season went. We played 4 games, 27 carries, 112 yards, which is actually impressive bouncing back from a knee injury. 2 touchdowns and 2 receptions for 17. 2021 was a limited season for him. And, he did not play as much. There was a lot of turmoil going on. We went 3-9. I mean, everything about that season was kind of weird. I mean, we lost a lot of players. We gained some more players. And for 2022, with all the other running backs that was here, the Jalen Whites, the Gerald Greens, we got the Omari Arnold, Terrence Gibbs coming in. Also, I think Tyler Jordan. I think he's another running back we have. Don't talk about him enough. But with all that coming in, where does J.D. King fit? To be quite honest, I mean, the way it looks like, I thought it was going to be a situation we was just going to have 2 bell cows running the ball, J.D. King and Jalen White, and have Gerald Green come in every now and then on 3rd down, because that kid can run the ball. Man, Gerald Green it's amazing. But nevertheless, we'll get to his spotlight at another time. But unfortunately, this is my personal opinion. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's gospel, and I don't want to put this out here in a bad light because I love J.D. King. I love what he was able to do for the team. I mean, he helped us play at a high level when needed be. But I'm not sure if he was the same after the knee injury. I mean, once the knee injury was over, he came back, he tried to play a little bit in 2021, but it just wasn't the same. It just didn't pan out the way we thought it would, and unfortunately, he ended up walking away from the game. Put a statement out on Twitter, and it was a really cool tweet that he put out, letting everybody know that he was walking away from the game. I will put that link down in the description. I'm not going to sit here and read it out loud or just read it for long, because it's a pretty good read. If you really, want to go back and, look at it. It's not a long statement, but it is a good statement. And I'm actually really, I'm really thankful for what he put out, because it just goes to show at the end of the day, he really, wanted to play, and it just was not able to at the end of the day. He decided to walk away from the game. And I'm not saying that he's not able to because of injury. It's a lot of factors go into it. And I think it's best for him, because I think that he would have been a real good asset for the team. My personal assessment, I'm not saying that this is gospel, but I just feel like he wasn't the same because of the injury, and I'm not sure if he was going to be able to be back 100%. So that's just my assessment. I will take the blame if I'm wrong. I don't have a problem with that. I'm just here to give you my assessment and my opinion of things, and I'm not trying to say anything that's bad or anything of that nature, but I just want to know that for me, I felt like that's where it was for me. That's the first thing that crossed my mind when I saw that. But I think he's going to be pretty stout wherever he goes. I think he's going to make an impact wherever he goes. He's going to be great whatever he touches. J.D. King is epitome of, first class Georgia Southern man. Is what we at Georgia Southern always strive for every recruit, every player that puts on that helmet and that blue and white, go out on that field and play. We always strive for, the best in players. It's one thing I loved about Coach Chad Lunsford. I mean, there's times like this when I look at J.D. King and I think back about Coach Chad Lunsford and what he was able to bring to the table as far as good, humble, athletic, hardworking players. And it's just something that, despite how 2021 went down and which Coach Chad Lunsford end up moving on, with the whole situation, J.D. King reminds me of a time where when we were able to look at our players and we could, actually relate to them, because we felt like these guys that are on the field are no bigger than the next man that's next to them. They didn't feel that they were bigger than uh, the game of football. We all related to them for every game that we went to everything that we, every time we saw them on, anytime through social media. None of these guys felt like they were bigger than bigger than the program. They just never felt like, and when it got to the point when it started to feel like that, that's when things fell apart. But I don't really want to talk about like that, the early 2021 season. When you go back and you look at the 2-10 turnaround to 10-3 and everything that happened between that and the RL Carrier Bowl, even the Cure Bowl, we didn't win the Cure Bowl. When you look at us, the Camellia Bowl victory, the time we beat Appalachia State at Boone, North Carolina, the blowouts that we had when we beat up on Georgia State, and when we also, end up winning the RL Carrier Bowl, the Camellia Bowl was just fantastic. And then turn back around, we win another bowl game. It's just all that right there was just a really good time. And JD King was one of those, was a part of that moment. Even when it was such big news when he got the transfer approved. It was a really big deal. It was like a celebration that, hey, one of our guys is coming home from Fitzgerald, Georgia. He's coming home to play in the state that he wants to play football in. And we made it a big deal because now we have one of our guys and he's going to help play the game at a high level. And that's what he did. He made it happen. He helped us tremendously. And not only like I said, with him, it just reminds me of a good time. Like, we have Coach Clay Helton now, but when you look at a guy like Chad Lunsford, or when you look at JD King, you think of Chad Lunsford, the good times that we had here at Georgia Southern. It was a great time at the end of the day. It was a really good moment. I mean, those first few weeks of 2021 does not define everything that happened during that coaching, era. But I feel JD King, not only with him, playing at a high level, but his story of him coming from Oklahoma State to Georgia Southern is a part of that whole situation from late 2017 to the end of, or the first part of 2021. It's not one of our shining moments at Georgia Southern because I've been around since the 80s, and I remember, I've been watching Georgia Southern for so long. I remember, the national championships at the FCS level, the 1AA level. I remember, the blowouts that we had of Savannah State, or beating up on Appalachia State, going back and forth with them, or, all the great games we had. And it's, I remember those good times. But that time, the late 2017, early 2021, it was a special time at the end of the day. And I don't think Coach Chad Lunsford didn't get enough credit, like real credit, for what he's done for the program. A lot of people look at Coach Lunsford for the man that he is, and he's a great man. He's built up a lot of great players that walked through that door of being an Eagle. But those few years he was here, I think he did a pretty good job overall. And like I said, JD King is just a part of that story, because when you look at what JD King was able to do from coming from Oklahoma State and helping this team, be respected in some ways, it's like I said, it's all about that. So when you do think about JD King, think of all the good times that we had when we, beat up on our rivals, when he ran the football like he was a man possessed, when he was able to, put things in, to lock a game down with this running game, and we end up crowning that king every time he made a touchdown. It was a good time. So now, before I close, I'll say this: where do we go from here? Now we got 4 running backs. We have 4 running backs for Georgia Southern that all of them could be running back number 1 if need be. Jalen White. You also have Gerald Green, which right now I just seen on Georgia Southern Football's Twitter that these 2 guys are going to be on the Doak Walker watch list. Don't be surprised. These guys can play some ball. These guys could run the rock, both of them. I watched them. Then you got the other two guys. I just made an episode about them, Omari Arnold and Terrence Gibbs. What are they going to do? Are they going to get some time at the, once, it's garbage time, we're going to put those guys out there to run the clock out? Or are they going to, surprise a lot of people and be too good to keep on the sideline? I mean, you just never know. Especially with a new coach with Kelly Helton. We don't know if it's going to be traditional seniority or is it going to be, hey, the best man is going to be out there playing. But that's another story for another day. I don't really want to get into that. But those are the guys that we're looking into right now since J.D. King is not going to be here. Jalen White, Gerald Green, Omari Arnold, and Terrence Gibbs. Like I said, I just did an episode on Terrence Gibbs and Omari Arnold. Maybe I'll do one once again on Jalen White and Gerald Green when it gets closer to the season. But the running back position has been left in good hands. We've been left with a treasure trove of talent with these four guys. And J.D. King was one of those guys that, helped pave the way. He really did. Thank you, J.D. King, for all you've done for the last 3-4 years for Georgia Southern. We really, really appreciate you. We can't thank you enough. Can't thank you enough for all the contributions you've done on and off the field. And I know you'll continue to contribute in whatever way you can to help us continue to be a decent program. If you like this commentary, hit the like button, share this podcast, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's episode 395. We're 5 away from 400. I'm also on YouTube and Rumble. I can be found on the podcast avenues, Anchor, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. We talked about J.D. King today, and I think, with him retiring, I mean, his career has been cut a little short. I gave you my reasons why. It is not to cast aspersions on him or anything. I don't know for sure, but that's just my opinion. But I think at the end of the day, he left his mark on Georgia Southern football. And in some ways, Oklahoma State as well, because he did pretty good at Oklahoma State as a freshman. So, unfortunately, he's not going to be playing ball. He's retiring, but we'll see what he does in his endeavors. We definitely will be following him, whatever he does. All right, y'all. I hope you guys enjoy your Thursday. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. You can hit all the links down in the description if you want to support in any way or form or fashion. I will really appreciate it. I will see you guys on Friday where, we'll probably find something else to talk about. I don't know. We'll find a topic to talk about, or we just may do a free for all and just randomly talk about, Falcons of Georgia Southern. All right, y'all. Y'all take it easy. Y'all be blessed. Peace.